And we are live in the Manx, Tatlock Man Cave. Not live to tape is what we used to say.
Yeah.
Mike Barrett, Mike Tatlock with Vertical Pursuit. Thanks for spending some time with us. Great to get back on do these. It's been a minute.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing?
Doing great. Doing really good. Speaking of that, we get asked every week, when you guys got a next episode? When you got a next episode?
Yeah.
When you got a next episode? I hear it all the time. I know you do too. So we need to figure out how we can crank these out more.
Exactly, and we will, but it does take a bit. And Colton Myers, great to help us out. And, Nick Livingston, David Ward, we appreciate that. We are on Spotify and iTunes and the Vertical Pursuit app and YouTube as well, because this is a vidcast along with audio. So if you've only ever heard it, you can actually watch it on YouTube. And I think there's a way to do that on Spotify, but we haven't done that yet. We're just right now on audio only on Spotify, but we are on YouTube, and I think we're on video and audio on the Vertical Pursuit app.
Yep,
correct?
Both are there.
Speaking of Vertical Pursuit, and I was going to bring this in later, but I just thought of it now, and it relates to what we're going to talk about in this episode. But the Vertical Pursuit book that kind of was the precursor to all of the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of came first, and then this followed behind along with everything else. You're the team chaplain for the Portland Trail Blazers, where I spent a lot of years. As if you listened before, you know that. Great to hear the other night at the Blazer-Laker game when you said that at Chapel you brought some books and didn't pressure anybody and just said to the players, and by the way, if you don't know how Chapel works in professional sports and NBA in particular, it's before the game and both teams are in there, the guys that want to come, and usually it's very well represented, and you give a short message and a prayer and turn them loose. But you brought some books in and they took them, huh? Snapped them up?
Well, yeah, you remember the day. In fact, we got to hang out at a game. That was fun this week.
Yeah.
It was good to see you back in the house, and the guys still love you, and the guys still talk about you. And every time I mention your name, and whether it's talking about a podcast or us just hanging out, I miss Mike. And I know you get that when you're there. They love you. They miss you. Because you were a huge part of the Chapel ministry. You're a huge part of just, we said this in other episodes where everybody's looking for that confidant, that person you can go to, trust. Because here's what people, you would assume this, but in professional sports, there's those who are for you, whether you're famous or not. And then there are those who are for you because they want the handout.
Yeah.
And these guys and women in professional sports, you really got to keep a tight circle. And it comes down to who do you trust. And so I say that because you were one of the guys that they really trusted, they knew you could talk to. And you keep things private. You're not out, contributing to things that ended up released in the media and about guys' private lives and all that kind of stuff. But you asked the question, we were in Chapel, and like you said, both teams meet. So this was the Laker game. Mm-hmm. We had about 5 guys in from the Laker team, and some of the same guys, without mentioning names, but guys who come in there. People see what goes on the court. It's really funny because you'll see guys going at it on the court, and then 20 minutes ago we were in a prayer meeting together. And so it's just fun to see how that works. But that Chapel was cool because the Vertical Pursuit book was a resource that we put together 8 or 9 years ago, and it's basically a combination of like 25 spiritual topics that have to do with spiritual growth or finding your purpose in life and
being a disciple, creating disciples.
Yeah, and creating disciples and helping others, giving them a tool on that.
Right.
And so we talk about it in Chapel, and the guys know that. But I brought some books in, and I told the guys, I said, hey, if any of you wanted to grab one of those, it had to do with some things we were talking about in Chapel. Help yourself. I brought a whole stack in, and they were gone.
That's so great.
But yeah, I just
because I know you, and you probably were very good about not having any expectations, saying they're just here. Don't worry about it if you want a book.
That was exactly.
I'm sure because that's the way you are. You didn't go around and hand them out.
In fact, they were
on
the other side of the room. I said they're over there. If you want them, you can go get one.
We're gonna have a test in 2 weeks on read chapters 3 through 8. No, but it's great that they grabbed them.
I think guys are hungry, and that's a cool thing. And I know this is a great segue into what we want to talk about this episode. There's a lot of things happening in our world that's really broken, concerning, and we should be. I mean, every day, we're seeing things, in the news, people's own personal lives, but gosh, some things have been happening even more in the last few weeks in the sports world. And I think it's a way to highlight what people see publicly as a result of what's happening privately behind the scenes. And it's a pretty cool when those things break out.
And it's amazing, as we're sitting here talking about pro athletes, and we both have spent so much time around professional athletes, and with my career there, and then you being the chaplain, obviously, and that's a similar but different. But yeah, it's amazing how often society and culture is shaped. Yes, by celebrities, but the celebrities oftentimes don't have, and I mean like movie and that kind of thing, they don't maybe carry the same authenticity that athletes do. Therefore, I think athletes are looked at differently by people. And I think that the big thing is we've always known, and we're getting to the Demar Hamlin thing with the Buffalo Bills and what happened on Monday Night Football, and just how it's swept this country. And I wanted to dive into it a little bit more because I think that it wasn't a surprise to people like us who've been there.
Yep, exactly.
And people can see that.
Yeah.
They can see it before a game, and certain players will take a knee at midfield or midcourt, or and a lot of people will say, well, that's just athlete. But it actually got put into motion to where it fed off of that. But I guess my first question is, before we dive into the huge part of the Hamlin story, which is not that it happened, but that it was covered.
Yes.
Because that is the difference to me.
Yep.
I was like, well, that happens all the time. I've seen that a million times when the locker room doors close or the cameras aren't on. That's normal. That's what happens. But the fact that it was covered and the way it was covered and accepted,
it was crazy
by people, which normally, especially now with this cynical culture that we're in and social media. And I guess it was because, I know it was a life-threatening situation to where even for those massive cynics or smart asses out there who always light stuff up, they didn't this time.
Yeah.
And I hate when I go on Twitter or some of these things, and then I go, and sometimes I do it, I go into the comments.
Yeah, I know.
Just to take the temperature and see, how was this received? How was this comment taken, and what was done with it? And sometimes I know what I'm going to see, but I still kind of want to see it. A lot of times I'm like, oh, geez, I can't believe people would think. But there wasn't this time. And I was scrolling up happily every time I would scroll and think, there's nobody out there poking holes in this. No. There's nobody. And then you see Josh Allen's comment the following week when the Bills opening kickoff is returned, when he's saying, I don't know what to tell you. He said, God's real. He goes, I was telling my teammates. And he admitted, I wasn't one of those guys in chapel before. I wasn't one of those guys who was out banging the drum. He said, but I saw it. I saw what happened. And and then there's the whole other side, which we'll get into too, is what it did in terms of kind of bringing the country together. Because we have said, not on this podcast, but at other times, oftentimes when things are so split, which they have been, and so bad, it often takes, you don't root for it, but it takes a tragedy, a natural disaster, a war, a 9/11 type thing to all of a sudden, because people have said, well, how come we can't be like we were after 9/11 when, and so I was kind of thinking in my mind, not thinking about it or asking for it, but thinking, I wonder what would happen if, are we too broken that even if something like that happened, would it still, well, it didn't take all that. It took one guy.
Yeah, exactly.
One guy.
Yep.
An NFL player.
Yep.
And if you think about it from a spiritual standpoint and the way that God would use something like this, which I know he did, Monday Night Football, all the eyes on this huge game, Buffett, Cincinnati, with the division title on the line and a lot of this stuff and seeding in the playoffs, and then to watch the reaction, stopping the game, the crowd not having a problem with that, everybody understanding the magnitude, and then how it just lit up in the media and talk shows, sports and otherwise, for the next, well, it's still going on, but for the next at least solid week. It was crazy. But back, I wasn't going to go all that stuff yet because I wanted to ask you first, why do you think professional athletes are so receptive to and so bold and courageous when it comes to professing their faith, where they put their hope and the way they live their lives. Why do you think that's sect good. In particular goes so hard toward it and is unapologetic about it?
I think what you're seeing is kind of this idea of LeBron James, and I'm not putting him on a pedestal. I'm using him as an example because I don't know LeBron. I've never had a conversation with him. But when he makes a statement, more than an athlete, more than an athlete, more than an athlete, I think what happens is a lot of these guys are at a place where all of us, whether you're a pro athlete or you're pumping gas or you're working as a school teacher or you're a financial advisor, at some point everybody gets to a point where you go, is this all there is? So I have all the money in the world. I have all the success in the world. I have all the status. So I've climbed the ladder my whole life since I was a kid to be an elite athlete. Get there, get to the next, make this AAU team, make this high school varsity team, make this college team, make it to the pros. You climb with this sense of when you get to the top, life's going to be great. And these guys get there and they go, yeah, it's great, but it's not. There's still something missing. And so I think there's something about chasing the dream of being this elite athlete with all the promises that go with it, and realize that being a professional athlete sometimes over-promises and under-delivers. And then you realize, what else is there? I need more to my life, something more grounding, something more significant, something bigger than me. So I think that's part of it, where a lot of athletes are trying to find something more because the success and the fame isn't feeding them. And either you go down a path and you feed that emptiness with everything else that can be negative and destructive, or you go, but what's good for me? And so that's part of the story. I think another part of the story, there's this really cool legacy of faith in sports. I mean, think about this for a moment, and this blows people's mind. A chapel at a professional sports game, whether it's football, baseball, hockey, soccer, basketball, whatever, these are places of business. It's an entertainment business. At the end of the day, professional sports is entertainment. And these are businesses. So imagine if you were working at Intel, working at Nike, or working at whatever down the street, someplace you work at, and all of a sudden you're
X-Golf.
X-Golf, which, by the way, you should go to X-Golf.
Brought to you by
X-Golf,
anyway.
Which we were there the other day, and we had a crazy awesome time as a family. And we're going there Thursday. I'm going to be there Thursday.
Okay.
Thursday afternoon. So, but when you think about this, you look at your place of employment, wherever you work. Imagine if they had a time at noon or on a lunch hour that you are invited. They have a chaplain that comes in and hosts that. That's absurd. I don't know of any secular business. Now, people can maybe do that on their own, but a secular business that we actually believe in this, we champion this because we think this is good for the people, your employees. But that's what professional sports has done with faith. It's like they've created space at the busiest time before a game to say, hey, we know our employees or our athletes, they need this.
So you're asking, how have they gotten away with this?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, this is crazy when you really think about it. And so there's this God favor in the world of sports where we can model something. I think every business, it would be cool if they had that.
Is it because of their influence, though?
I mean,
that's where it's valuable.
It is. It's valuable because of their influence. But what I hear and what you know is it's a player-driven mentality. Yeah. So you've heard this before too. It's player-driven. So if players need something, and this is what's crazy. I wish secular businesses would understand this, but the secular business of pro sports understands the value and the weight of these. So I'll give you an example of what that means. One of the number one things professional athletes struggle with is anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not uncommon to, everybody else. But the head office from the NBA, I remember gathering with the NBA chaplains. We get together a couple times during the year. We meet up and it's a great, just team effort from all the chaplains across the league. So we get together twice a year. We meet up in some city, pray together and worship together, encourage each other. So we had a meeting about 3-4 years ago, and the head office from the NBA from New York sent a representative to say, wow, we're struggling with this anxiety issue. Man, we really need you guys as chaplains. So what you're doing is great. You're super valuable to us. Keep doing what you're doing because we need all the help we can get from team psychologists, sports psychologists, coaches, mentors, and chaplains. So they see the intrinsic value that faith brings even from people that maybe don't share the same faith, that are in management or at the highest level, because they know it's a benefit to the players. Imagine if employees and employers had that same dynamic.
I was going to say, and it promotes. So where is teamwork put on display more than anywhere else?
Exactly.
And where is it as important as anywhere? So imagine in a company, you think you would look to a team or a sporting event, which is all about sacrifice for each other, sacrifice for the common goal of the team, all of these kind of pure attributes of what it lends itself to.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you think that? I mean, that's the part of it. And then you see, again, to go back to Hamlin, you see the result of, or where everybody turned when.
Exactly.
Rather than go to be lost in a moment like that. It was like this magnet and these players knew what to do.
Absolutely.
They had if there was ever an example of a group of people that had a clear focused North Star. It was right in that moment.
And that's the thing. I mean, this goes back, I think we can go almost 40 years ago to when the first chapels were happening, at least in the NBA. And I think from what I understand, it was similar with professional football around the same time. And it started with the guys like Julius Erving. I mean, back in the day, these are guys of faith, and they say, man, I wonder if we just pray together before the game. And then next thing you know, here's where we're at today, where every team has a chaplain, has services, both teams meet together before the game. And you're like, whoa, there's a legacy there. But there's also there's a legacy of a lot of these guys' families they've grown up in, aunties and grandmas who have a deep faith and have really passed on the value of that. And so some of these families have grown up with that. So you culminate all of that together, from the management that sees it as value, from those who grew up in homes where this was something to value, the legacy over all the years in the NBA. And it all culminates to a point where a bunch of players are on a field when one of their teammates drops down. It all culminates to those moments. And that's what we said in church that one day, is what you saw on display when a team takes a knee and they pray. That was not reactive. That was responsive.
Yeah. There's a huge difference there too.
Huge difference there. That's a response to the seeds that have been planted and planted and planted, and the years and the decades of legacy and those athletes that were doing that and playing a part of that, and the chaplains pouring into that. So now it's a response. Like when a player goes down, what are we doing? We drop and we pray. That's what we do. And it was almost like they led it.
Yeah.
They led it with themselves, and because they've inherited that faith and that value. And then all of a sudden the world gets to see it and goes, whoa. And I think our world is aching for more of those examples.
Is that why the response was what it was nationally? Because that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
It felt like all of a sudden, even from some who maybe didn't know they felt that way, it unearthed a hunger that many didn't know perhaps existed. Totally. Is that safe to say?
Oh, absolutely. I think too that so something else that I think we can talk about here. So let's bring it back to even something that happened this last week with the Blazers. And one of the reasons you were at the game, you were there because there was a tribute for Sean's and, just his legacy. Yeah. But what's interesting is we had 2 deaths this last week with the Blazers. We had a cameraman that was a good friend of yours.
Yeah, long.
For how many years was he
40
there?
years.
40 years.
He was our cameraman. I always say my because it felt like he was mine, because every studio show I did, every Monday night, he was right there. And then he was a baseline camera for all those years, Coliseum, Moda Center, everything. And that was really sudden. Yeah. A wonderful guy. And obviously, as everybody has talked about, and then Bill Schonley, the original voice of the Blazers, Bill was 93 and in hospice. Yeah. So we knew that one was likely. We knew that where that was going, so that wasn't a shock. John's was a shock.
Right.
But then to continue where I think you're headed with this, you go ahead.
Well, so what happens is anytime, and you guys know this too, anybody that's listening knows this, that when someone close to you passes away, whether it's expected or tragic, it still reminds us of our mortality. We come face to face with the reality that at some point, every single one of us, and we really don't have control over that as much as we think we do. And so then all of a sudden, here we are, and I'm just giving a practical example where I walk in this last week, and there's 2 deaths that happen. One unexpected, one that was maybe understood, lived a well-loved life and respected.
And you're ready for the celebration of life on that one.
Absolutely.
Not the tragic circumstance of.
Right. but then everybody. So I'm walking through the arena from players to coaches to development staff to employees that are just checking tickets. It's in the atmosphere. Everybody knows, hey, this is a heavy week. Mm-hmm. This is a heavy week. One gal who sits and does security at the locker room last night, she goes, "We just need something here in this arena. It's such a heavy feeling." I go, "I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the reality that anytime someone passes away, and especially when you have two back to back, you're reminded of the weight of that." And so what's interesting, it came up in one of our chapels because we do prayer requests before every chapel. And I ask everybody, what are the prayer requests? And everybody kind of pray for family, pray for wisdom, pray for help, pray for this. And what came up was, wow, we need prayer right now for what's happening with the loss of these. And so in that moment, not only did I pray, but we had a whole conversation about this is our time. We are the faith community, the 15 of us in this locker room. It's our job assignment. This was just 2 nights ago.
That's awesome.
This came up in chapel.
Wow.
This is our job assignment to now go out to every other teammate, employee in the organization. This is the moment to say, this is where we provide comfort. We want to be comfort. We also want to remind that it's our faith in Christ, that when we face the question of immortality, that when we say yes to Jesus, there's an answer on the other side of that. That's not one of uncertainty, but one that we can spend eternity with Christ. And so these are the moments that when we're faced with the question and the certainty of mortality, how we can have life with Christ. So it was a rally time for us to go, man, there's everybody else in the arena that needs us to be light right now. Let's leave this chapel. Let's go out and be that for others, in whether it's down the locker room, down the hallway, maybe it's a fan, but let's be some light and hope and comfort right now in this time.
And you would hope, because a lot of these things, and I mentioned prior tragedies where you saw the country and people come together, and you'd hope that it wasn't, desperate times or desperation does
do that.
Reveal
it does
where you lie and where your comfort is. So I think the biggest question then, before I get to the other part, and that was the reaction nationally to this in the non-sports world, or at least some of the more mainstream, is how do you maintain that, and how do you keep your focus on that, and how do you keep your discipline on that when maybe it's not a desperate time? And we always talk about, and there's been big issues and big challenges even among friends of mine and who I talk about this with, because everybody hits their knees not everybody, but most people, when times are absolutely tough, you hit your knees. It's the people that do it when things are going amazingly well, where I go, okay, you got it together. Yeah. If you can keep your focus there now and not just when you're desperate, but that seems to be a huge challenge.
Well, and here's another case in point, because you said something earlier about, it's in times like this, you see what's hidden now revealed. And a lot of these guys already had the faith, and what was put on display was who they really are. Yeah. These guys, they're just like you and I. They're not perfect. They struggle in their faith and doubts just like we all do, but there's so many of them have a legitimate faith. And so in that moment of crisis, what you see come to the surface is legitimate faith. They're not doing it. These guys were not doing that for a show. They were not doing that thinking, hey, this is going to get played on ESPN and get a lot of coverage, and let's get the most out of this tragedy by making an opportunity for ourselves. It had nothing to do with it. It was a legitimate response of their faith. But what you said was so good in terms of that desperation it evokes in us, but then it fades. Yeah. We saw this after 9/11. I remember being a pastor. As soon as 9/11 happened, we had days of prayer where people were coming to church, whether they were churchgoers or not. But it kind of faded out. Yeah. And then you're like, and then the next thing happens and so forth. But I think that's part of that's human life and human nature, is that in times of desperation, we come to the realization of our own limitations. But here's an interesting example. I make my rounds when I go to a game. I don't just spend time in the locker room. I probably see 20 to 30 employees, and that can be someone who's taking tickets. And so there's one gal, and she's new this season. And so I walk in, and she's helps with tickets as everybody goes through security. And so I'm just saying hi to her, getting to know her, and just building kind of a very, kind of just a friendly relationship. Mm-hmm. And I noticed the other night that this is crazy. So there's like 6 people that are responsible for the check-in where you've been through there. We park our cars, we walk in. There's about 6 people doing security and tickets. And she's there every time. And I say hi to all of them. And it's a friendly hello. But this time I noticed that she was sitting on her chair instead of standing. And I'm like, she never sits on a chair. They all stand out here. So I asked her, I said, hey, I noticed you're sitting tonight. What's the deal? And she's like, oh, my back. I got this lower back pain. They brought a chair out for me. And I just felt like the Spirit of God said, pray for her. And I've never had a faith conversation other than just saying hi. She knows who I am. And that's right. So I looked and I said, do you mind if I just pray for you? And I said, like right now, not like I'll pray for you as I like awesome. Walk away. Like, oh, I'll keep you in my prayers. I said, do you mind if I just pray for you right now? She's like, oh, that'd be great. So I put my hand on her shoulder and I prayed for her right now. And everybody else just stopped and watched.
Really?
Everybody else that's doing security and checking tickets, they just stopped and watched. And I just prayed for her back. And she, it's not like, oh, and there was this great, it would have been awesome if she would have like jumped and did like a somersault and all that cool stuff. It would have been like, oh my gosh, instant miracle.
You didn't pull snakes out of your truck or anything.
Exactly, totally. And that didn't happen. And I think sometimes that's why we don't do these things, because we're like, well, if it doesn't work. And then we don't do that. I'm like, well, first of all, what if it does work? That would be great. But even just the gesture.
Yeah.
And so now this is what we talk about. And now she's asking, hey, can you pray for peace? And then she's like, oh, can you pray for so-and-so now? Because they just lost their house in a fire. And so now we've got people who are just open to prayer because it comes from a place of, and what I've learned is this over the years, being a pastor, we always talk about atheists don't believe in God. And that is true for many people. But my experience is I'll talk with someone who's like, I don't really do church. I don't really follow Jesus. I don't really believe, I don't know, maybe I'm more agnostic. I don't know. There could be a guy. I don't know, whatever. And then I'll ask him a follow-up question. How are you doing? Anything I can pray for. It's the funniest thing. It's the funniest thing. Just after hearing all of that, I'm like, hey, is there anything I can pray for you? Not that you have to pray. I just say, hey, they know I'm a person of faith. Oh, would you please? Would you please? Could you pray for my aunt? Could you pray for my husband? Could you pray for my kid? And they'll just, and the next thing you know, not only are they opening their heart to prayer, wow, they start sharing the real stuff. It's amazing how that happens. And I think prayer is an invitation to our own mortality, but prayer is an invitation that I think deep inside, everybody knows that they are limited. And I think it awakens. The Bible says that we are created in the image of God. Every human being is created in the image of God. And the Bible tells us there's a sense that inside of us we know, but we maybe can't put a name. We can't figure that out. But I think in those moments, so when you see prayer happen on a field, there's something in humanity to go, that's right. And of course we know there's those who are against that. But I think what we saw is it awakened inside of us something that God has put in us, which is a craving and a desire to be in relationship with him and to know him. So that's my take.
Well, and a lot of people, as we know, they look up to athletes. And that's where I think they realized that. And I didn't sense that anybody at that moment was doing that for show, as we just talked about. And then what followed that, again, on social media, where I kind of went to kind of gauge the reaction nationally and fully expecting, not in the first moment, okay, because I know there are some heartless people out there, but there was nobody that bad.
Right.
But then I'm watching the next couple of days and a live prayer on ESPN, which is, as people know, not exactly a conservative type network that you'd expect to see that on. But then even on CNN, on Anderson Cooper, he's got somebody on talking outwardly boldly about this stuff. And he's listening and shaking his head. That's stuff that before this happened, you would have never thought. Or if somebody would have said, what would it take to make that happen? I don't know if I could have come up with anything. Yeah. And then to see that it was one guy on a well-placed primetime slot. Because I think if this happens on a Sunday, it's still big.
Yeah, right.
And the league is still talking about it, but not like it was.
Right.
Not a Monday night. Right after the holiday season, in a big game on the field, clearly on camera, passing out, landing on his back, and it was just like, and that was disturbing. To be sure, to see it happen. But then I guess I hope that and again, you always said it always fades. The hope is that people can keep the memory of this, the impact of this, and the response.
Yeah.
And even as I said before, sometimes the cynics and naysayers, man, they parked it.
Yeah.
I love that they parked it, and and not to say that they're going to keep it parked, because
Right.
we already see ugliness start back with everything.
Yep.
But again, it wasn't the reaction because we've seen it. Maybe to some they would say, "Well, I didn't know athletes." Well, we've seen that. What stunned me about the whole thing, and what I kept texting you about, over texting you about, I was texting you just
great. It was so good that I ended up using some of that footage in church that next Sunday. And by the way, because I want to segue into that too.
Okay.
So finish your thought.
No, I just was saying it just was amazing as I kept feeling, and I think what I was texting you was, are you seeing this? Because a part of it was
You were like,
my mind.
This is crazy what's
because I
happening
spent
right
years in the media, 30 years.
Exactly. I
And,
loved it.
and I'm going, they're covering this. It's not that it was happening, but normally it's happening during a commercial, or some networks will cover, they call it, have a commercial during the national anthem or during a time you would see this stuff. This was front and center and being covered, then being recapped.
Yep.
You just wouldn't ever see that before. So I was kind of trying in my own head to think, yes, it's the situation, but is it because of where we've been as a country, and is there within people a massive need for this, and are they starting to understand that, or am I overthinking that?
No, I would say, and this is the great segue, everything you just said, because as you were texting me, you're like, are you watching this? And I was like texting my son about it, because my son's a big Bills fan. And so I was like, Jaden, are you checking this out? Because he's following it. And so, I mean, it was captivating. I don't know how, if you're a football fan, how did you miss this? And then even if you're not, if you're coming on the fringe, you were hearing it. So it began to spill out that even non-football fans were like, wait, what happened? What happened?
Yeah,
What's going on?
Right.
And they weren't just hearing about him having a heart attack. There's athletes that get injured all the time. That happens all the time. It's not very common that you see an athlete fall with something that is that serious and life-threatening. That's pretty rare. But what was amazing that I think was getting the coverage and the tidal wave that was moving across the country was the response and the way it was picking up media attention over and over again. And we know, so here's what I would say. Yes, media wants to jump on a story because they want the views. And people could talk to us right now and say, well, that's all that was. And I'm going to tell you right now, God uses those things. I think what was happening, and I shared this on Sunday, the next Sunday after that happened, showed the video clip, showed what happened, showed the pictures and the response. I think God used that as a moment to foreshadow something for us as a nation. And I think God uses, the Bible says God uses even the foolish things to shame the wise. God can use anything. I joked, he used a donkey in the Old Testament, New Testament too. I mean, God uses everything to be his messenger. But here's the reality is this, that posture, the posture of humility, the posture of desperation, the posture to say, God, we need you right now. And it reminds me of in the Old Testament scripture where it says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and seek my face, I will hear from them and heal their land. And I think that oftentimes nations go sideways because of our arrogance, because we're self-driven and self-focused. And it takes tragedy sometimes to make us realize that the only hope we have is to look up beyond ourselves, that the Creator who created all things, who's all powerful, is our only hope. And I think God used that moment as a message to our nation to say, if you want to take that posture, I'll respond. If we as a nation, we as the church, for sure, absolutely the church, but even as a nation, would be humble enough to say, God, we need you. And that's what revival is. That's what great awakenings happen. And you see that over the course of history, where nations would go sideways and become destructive and corrupt and divisive and all those sort of things. But the nations who come together and they basically, the Bible says, could return back to God. God honors that. He heals that. He blesses that in a nation. So I just look at it and go, man, what a cool moment for the church. What a cool moment for us as a nation. I think I see it as an invitation where God's saying, if this is your posture, watch what I'll do with you. The opposite of that is a different posture, which is a posture of arrogance and pride that sticks our finger up at God and says, no, we don't want you. But I think in that moment, God was saying, I'm going to highlight this because I need people to see that's the posture I'm looking for.
And for me, I think I was in the media, I am on social media, I can get cynical. But to me, the way and I typed this out to a influential media buddy of mine, I said, I am reassured, and this was a win for humanity, when it has felt like a time when we have been so lost and without any kind of anchor and completely on sand and without any kind of compass. And this was reassuring to me. And maybe that's why I kept texting you over and over again, because I usually have a pretty good, I feel like anyway, pretty good awareness for where things are at. And because of that, I'm not proud of this, I'm rarely shocked by anything. You know what I mean? I'm rarely surprised because I'm usually not expecting what I see, because I usually go, okay, I had that one penciled out. I didn't have this one.
No, I didn't see this.
I just
coming
didn't.
at all. No.
And so when it happened, even as tragic, then the response. And so I'm texting you going, are you watching this? Because I'm like, this is crazy to me.
No, this is.
It didn't matter the circumstance. No. I mean, we've compared it, and I hate doing it. I don't mean to. But something like a 9/11 or something, because we've talked about how tragedy like that, because that's fresh in our minds. Right. I know it was a while back, but that was the last time we saw this healing, immediate healing.
Totally. Absolutely.
And I didn't think, despite the tragedy that it was, I didn't know it would take one guy on Monday Night Football to have a response. And I'm not saying it was the same, but I think the impact was the same.
Yeah.
And given today versus back then, social media and how it can catch fire, that shocked me. And I think that response and then and being allowed to play out and run for as many days as it did without the people coming up and poking holes in it was stunning to me.
Oh, unbelievable. And I think the thing is, maybe we wrap up, but I was thinking how that same Sunday, we showed the video, and I remember we all in that service, because we talked about what if this was the posture in our own lives. Yeah. So how do we take that we saw on a national level and go, how does that inspire me to live every day? And because that's the posture I should have. If I humble myself, if I bend a knee before God, say, God, I need you. And what we oftentimes do in life is when we face crisis, we face struggles and problems, we start with us and we exhaust our own solution, and then God's our last resort. Instead of God being our first option, he's our last resort. And I think just what you saw in those guys was their first response was to the knee, God, we need you. And he wasn't their last resort. He was their first option. And you think about running options in football. Yeah. That was their first option, would drop to a knee, we're praying. That was exactly how, what if we lived every day? So that church service that we did the next Sunday, we did that. Yeah. We did that. I said, hey, right here in the service, let's drop to that same posture. And everybody got on their knees. We held arms, everybody across the aisles as if we were in our own huddle. And we said, God, we need you. And I keep thinking, I heard the feedback that was one of the most powerful Sundays we've had.
It was.
And so many people.
And I'll bet it was in a lot of churches.
That's the point. I think God was highlighting that. I felt when you sent that to me, I didn't want to miss a moment here. To not talk about this, it was a missed opportunity. And
without being a producer, I was like, dude, you are using this in your sermon.
Yeah, it has to be. Because I think God was saying, watch this, guys. This is something I need you to pay attention to. And so to learn from this. And so for me, my takeaway is every day, how do I have that same posture? How do I walk my life out, but on my knees and with that humility that says, God, we need you, we need you, we need you. And I don't know if I want to have, like you said earlier, do I have to wait till the next tragedy before I do that?
Yeah, right.
Do I have to move from tragedy to tragedy to have that posture? Or can I actually, whether I'm in a season of great things happening or not, I'm just going to keep that same posture, humility and desperation and dependence on God?
And it's interesting taking a knee like that. And we saw them kneel, the players, these huge warriors with their arms on each other. And yes, it's brotherhood. And yes, that was coming together. But as you said, that's humility, and that's just showing I'm humble. There's
it.
a power above me,
Yeah.
and we need you right now. That's what was phenomenal. It was
Yeah.
truly, as many years as I've been in sports and my whole life, I'm not sure I've seen anything that surprised me more as far as a reaction to.
Yeah.
Because we've seen, seen some terrible stuff, and even I broadcast some games where there's been some horrific injuries. Nothing like CPR on the field, which we saw that night, but it was reassuring, to put it mildly, to see not only the reaction of the players, the fact that they were allowed to show it, and then the days that followed it was stunning. But great episode and great topic, and we could go another hour on this, because it was one of those things that just, again, I think it stirred up a lot of people, and a lot of people like us who were like, yes, not because of the injury and the health issue, because of the reaction and because of the public's reaction. And again, that's the reaction of the players didn't surprise me. The reaction of the media and the public and social media, that's what shocked me. Thanks for spending some time with us on Vertical Pursuit. We invite you in, and if you haven't checked out some of the other episodes, they're all posted on YouTube, on Spotify, on iTunes, on the Vertical Pursuit app. By the way, we talked at the beginning of this segment, or this episode, about the Vertical Pursuit book that all the guys grabbed. It's on the app, right?
It's on the app for free.
And it's on the website,
it's a digital,
too.
Yep. It's a digital version that you can get for free. You can download it, so you have it on your laptop, iPhone, whatever you use, your device.
And that's on verticalpursuit.org.
Verticalpursuit.org,
is the
and
website.
the app is Vertical Pursuit app. It's all free. Download it, and there you go.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
We invite you to subscribe to our podcast, comment, or message us, and check out our website at verticalpursuit.org. Download the VP app and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.